I found your brother in the breeze, pushing me gently but firm, like his hand on my shoulder. Took some time, but he was there.
He wasn't there, Mother. The presence that you felt was just a construct of your mind. Brought on so you could feel some comfort or joy. That's all.
What construct does your mind create when you think of your brother? Does it offer you comfort or torment?
We interrupt this program to bring you...
All right, everybody. My name is Kevin.
I'm Adam.
And I'm Julie.
And we are the Real Movie Guys. And welcome back to another episode of The Real Review, the series where we review and discuss all your favorite movies. And don't forget, if you like what you see and you want to see more, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel today. On today's episode, we're taking a look at Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, directed by Ryan Coogler, starring Nakia Wright, Lupita Nyong'o, and Angela Bassett. The people of Wakanda's fight to protect their home from intervening world powers as they mourn the death of King T'Challa. All right, guys, let's talk a little bit about Black Panther and the awkward situation they were put in with this movie, because unfortunately, we did lose the original Black Panther, which I was personally, extremely sad about. It's a weird situation for Marvel to be in. Chadwick Boseman, I think, beyond just Black Panther, he was an exceptional actor, and he really did embody that movie. And I'm going to say this, and it's going to come out that way. I wasn't a huge fan of the first Black Panther. I think it's a milestone for what it did, having an entirely African-American cast, and I think that's incredibly commendable, and I do. But as far as, being another generic Marvel movie, at the end of the day, that's kind of what it was to me. It did have some highlights. I think, Killmonger was a nice touch, and, Michael B. Jordan being cast, that's fantastic too. But again, at the end of the day, good Black Panther fights bad Black Panther. That's what it was, and that seems to be like the typical Marvel origin story formula. Fast forward, Black Panther Wakanda Forever, T'Challa we've got to grow with, over the course of the couple movies. While, he was in Avengers, he had a couple big scenes. The Winter Soldier movie, he also had a big scene too, which was even prior to Black Panther. We've seen him, we've got to know him. He embodied the character of Black Panther. So what do? The actor unfortunately passes away. Do you replace him? Do you have someone succeed him? What do you do in this instance? Marvel, I want to start with this. Adam, do you think what they did was a good decision, or would you have recast him? I know. It's a tough decision.
It is a tough decision. No, I think what they did was okay.
Okay.
I think I'm going to accept that. Yeah, I do.
Even if I think they walk it back at some point, which we'll talk about a little bit later.
Okay.
But
okay, I'll wait.
Okay with that. Julie, how about you? If you were put in this situation, what would you have done? Not having the foresight of, I should have prefaced that, not having the foresight of seeing Wakanda Forever.
I think to honor his memory, I think they needed to proceed the way that they did, because I think the opening of the movie was truly a beautiful send-off and tribute to him, because it was such a tragic loss for, to lose him as a person, to lose him as a performer. And you could see that among the actors. I feel like to just recast him would have been too, not in poor taste, but for such like a monumental accomplishment, achievement was to have like, maybe not the first African-American superhero, but truly in like popular culture.
Right.
Where he's on backpacks and stuff like that. I think that was the most tasteful way to do it.
I mean, a lot of people bring up Spawn, but let's be realistic. It's Black Panther.
Let me say successful in pop culture.
Yeah,
African
and I
American.
agree, and it's a really tight spot. Would I have recast him? I think I might have, just because it would have gave another actor an amazing opportunity, young African American man, that opportunity to be that character and to carry on the story. I think there's an argument to be made there, especially, you know, it's tough. Chadwick Boseman had a presence about him. He embodied that character. He had, he had the swag. He had just everything about him that you wanted to have in this character. I think he embodied. And finding that again, I don't know if you would have been able to. So no matter what they did, they were in a bad situation. But I guess the beautiful part about this movie, if you take apart, the story, we'll talk about everything like that. But the beginning of this movie is beautiful for what they did for Chadwick Boseman, because it's all about celebrating him and what he accomplished, as if, he died in real life and he died in the movie universe. They combined the two events and gave him a proper send-off. It really was a beautiful, in memory of, and I really like that. And I think that was one of the better parts it did, and that's where we kind of get confused, because it's as if Marvel themselves kind of showed they were confused as well in this movie, because guys, I'm going to say it, I really didn't have a good time at all with this movie. Beyond, like I said, that beautiful tribute to Chadwick Boseman, I didn't find myself really finding anything else I really liked. I think Namor, we'll talk about, was interesting as a character, but other than that, wasn't for me. Adam, how are you feeling about this one?
This movie felt long.
Yeah, and I think that's a big thing we're going to talk about, yeah.
Yeah, it didn't hit where I wanted it to hit. There's certain things that I wish that it would have happened. I mean, like you mentioned, I think Namor was really cool. I think he was a very well done character.
Right.
There's a few scenes that I did like, but I mean, overall, it was just a very...
And it feels long. It feels long. And even if it wasn't 2 hours and 41 minutes, which is very long for a movie, it felt like 4 hours at times when we were watching it. And a movie shouldn't feel like that. No. And yeah, I think there's a lot of things we can talk about to why that is. Julie, how about some of your early thoughts with this one?
It felt long. I think as we were watching it, maybe at least 2, maybe 3 times, I went, wow, this movie's really long. And I know at one point there was, a large battle at Wakanda with Namor, leading the charge. And I thought, I'm like, all right, this is the climax. This is Endgame, this is where we're going to kind of wrap things up. And I'm like, oh my gosh, another probably 40 minutes, maybe 30, 40 minutes. I did love Namor. That was a huge positive, but a lot of low, very lulled, not a lot of action.
Right.
Even just what was happening. It's not like it was, because the first Black Panther had at least some cool, spy moments, I guess, where they were kind of undercover doing things like that. They kind of did that, but didn't feel like there was a stake at all. It was just...
I agree. You're hitting every point I'm about to make, but I think ultimately the biggest problem with this movie is it doesn't know what it wants to do, and it doesn't know how to get there coherently. That's arguably the worst part. It starts off with Shuri, who this movie should have been about. Essentially, this should have really just been Shuri's story. If she was going to take over the mantle of Black Panther, which I don't think that's a spoiler. That's what we can assume, even from the posters. That was where we were going. Nakia, right? I think she's a great actress too. I think she is charming. She has, if you weren't going to recast him, I think she is the logical next choice because it kind of makes sense. Unfortunately, the movie doesn't really spend a decent amount of time with her for me to care about her journey. And I think Marvel is starting to get that syndrome where they're worried about other projects too, because we spend a lot of time, unfortunately, with Riri Williams, who's played by Dominique Thorne, who's Ironheart. That's not really a spoiler either, I don't think. I mean, she's a relatively new character in the Marvel universe, but I think this movie screamed backdoor pilot a lot for her character, and I was not having a good time, especially the whole... Just they felt shoehorned, we got to shove this character in here. So, the Namor conflict is interesting and it's very well done. Kind of like Adam said, when Namor and Nakia, right, Shuri were interacting with one another, those were some really good scenes, especially when they're discussing their history and their two peoples. Is it cliche? Yeah, we've seen that before. Like, oh, I've walked a mile in your shoes, now walk on a mile in mine and see what I've gone through. Okay, we've seen that, and agree to disagree, and we're gonna have this big war. It's so messy. This movie just doesn't know how to tell that coherent story, and that's one of my bigger problems with it. How about you, Adam? Were any of those things hitting you too? Were you a fan of Riri?
I mean, they were entertaining characters. I'm happy to see them on the screen finally, and whatnot, finally be portrayed and whatnot. But I don't know. It's just so sloppy. It's so mismanaged, and the Black Panther movie needed more Black Panther.
Black Panther is probably in this movie 20 minutes.
That's
I
the
would
best
think.
part of this movie.
Right. And
Like the last half hour, 45 minutes is the best part.
And ironically, I feel like they don't really discuss the Black Panther throughout the whole movie. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of brought up at one point, like, oh, hey, who's going to be the next Black Panther? I don't know. Then we just forget about it until the end. Then suddenly, like, oh shit, we got to go fight all these people. We need a Black Panther. And then Shuri's like, I guess I'll do it now because it can work out for me. That's what it feels like. And it's like very just like convenience to get to that point. And I'm like, it doesn't feel like as special as it should have felt. And that's why maybe in some way casting another actor and just carrying on that story might have been a little more impactful in some ways, because this wasn't it for me. Julie, what did you think of that? Did you get that same kind of vibe?
Well, yeah, I mean, I felt like that was even a running joke too, like how, people were trying to take advantage of the fact that there wasn't a Black Panther, to get the vibranium. And like Adam said, the best part of the movie is the last 40 minutes. I did also like the fight in Wakanda. I thought that was cool, but there's no Black Panther there. So to have a Black Panther movie with no Black Panther was disappointing. I personally didn't like the Ironheart stuff at all. I found her character to be very dull. And I felt like it just took away from the momentum of everything that was happening. And I love even too, for the majority of the movie, they just referred to her as the scientist. We need to find a scientist. Bring me the scientist or else. Like, she was literally just the scientist.
Yeah, they really don't say her name very often. It's very...
the scientist.
Right. And essentially she comes down to just female Tony Stark. Just a much younger version of her. And even her suit is literally the Iron Man suit. They try not to make it super obvious, but it kind of is, especially when she has the whole Halo thing in there with all the screens moving. Like, come on, guys. Like, you do better. At least make it a little bit different. That's one of the problems, right? That's one story in this multiple stories going on here. Because then we also get some of the S.H.I.E.L.D. stuff that's going on in here, which... it wasn't so intrusive, and it kind of makes sense. I love Martin Freeman. Don't get me wrong. His Everett Ross is phenomenal. I like he still has a connection with, the Black Panther, the Wakanda Kingdom and everything. And Julia Louis-Dreyfus, I think she's going to be a big powerhouse to come in the series, and I like how she was included. And their relationship, I think, is really funny. But it felt like, again, like Adam said, like too much. Because now that, we have to worry about what's happening in Wakanda, suddenly we have people... kind of impersonating they think it's the Kingdom of Wakanda, murdering people and stealing stuff. Like, do we need that side plot too? Like, we already have another thing with, Namor's people. We already have a whole thing going on there. Do we need another side plot, Adam? Did we need that too?
No, I don't think so. Just going from back and forth, it just becomes very chaotic.
Right. And let's give it to this. So, Tenoch Huerta, which I'm sorry, I probably butchered your name, and I'm very sorry, plays Namor. He was really good. I think he did a phenomenal job. Almost to the point where I kind of like, and I'm kind of getting over these kind of villains, but, maybe I am a hypocrite too sometimes where, I like when I can sometimes understand a villain, right? I can understand where they're coming from, and he's not really a villain. To that extent, he is just doing the same thing. He's protecting his people. He's a little more aggressive about it, right? So I kind of like that, and I like his whole aesthetic. The winged feet, I wasn't sure how that was going to translate. Looks kind of silly, but it was cool.
I like his design. I thought it was great. It was very unique.
Yeah.
It was, compared to everything else that we've seen so far. I thought it was cool.
Yeah, maybe I was let down by the CG, which was kind of a disaster and a half in this movie.
That's fair.
I just, Marvel just can't seem to nail down the human figure in motion when it uses CGI, and it is just not pretty to look at. at sometimes, and it's a shame because I think they have money. Pay your artists, pay your CGI people. You can do better, Marvel. But getting off track here, Namor was really good. You know, he had good chemistry with everyone. I believed his story. That's where I wanted. And again, I liked the whole connection between him and Shuri, like inheriting these kingdoms and having to take over. Like that was a logical story to move forward with. But all this other stuff, all this other outside interference, just it kind of tore it apart for me. Adam, I feel like you're on the same page too with that. That was the story I wanted, but I didn't get that.
Right. Yeah. No, I'm right there with you.
And the people are cool, like the Namor, the Atlantean people. That's very interesting. You know what I mean? Like I think that's it's a good story, right? It felt a little bit different. It felt like it kind of echoed the Wakanda people and what they have going on as well. Like two societies that want to live away from the world and maybe join when the time is right or at their own convenience.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But, you know, it's a shame. You know, I think there was a lot there. And, you know, this isn't the end of Namor by any means. I think we're going to see him again he is a big character in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So hopefully he comes to those heights that we've seen him before. I don't know, though. He kind of lost to Black Panther pretty easily at the end of this movie. That was kind of another little bit of an issue there.
He got burnt up a little bit.
He got burnt up a little cooked fish there. Oof. Yeah, poor Namor, but
I felt bad for him. I really did. I mean, I guess I'm a bad person, but I was genuinely actually rooting for him in that last fight.
I was sympathizing with him more throughout
this movie.
Was. You know, his people are kind of screwed over. You know, they're underneath the ocean, and people are going to start finding them.
That goes to show that, you know, I guess in a way that's good writing though, because we can sympathize with the enemy too.
Right. And it's so messy. It really is. I really feel bad for Latia Wright. I think I really do. At the end of the day, I think this was her time to shine as Black Panther. I feel like they just undercut her so bad. The scene she has, which I guess this is more of the spoiler territory. So if you're watching this and you don't really want to get too deep into this is where we're going to talk about some of the more deeper details. There's a scene where she has to go into the kingdom of the Black Panther where, you know, they inherit their skills and they're granted their power. And she doesn't see her brother. She doesn't see her grandfather or her ancestors. She sees Killmonger. And I thought that was fantastic. I thought that was a really nice foil to the character. Like Michael B. Jordan, I did not expect him to be in this movie. I don't know if that was announced or maybe I missed it. That was a great scene. That was like what I wanted. And do you think the movie really played off with it, Adam? Do you think they really took that whole... Because that was like a core theme that should have been running throughout this whole movie. But instead, we got it in the last 40 minutes.
I agree. That was so cool. I was one of the best, if not the best part of that whole movie. And I understood why she saw him instead.
Right.
It just made so much sense.
Right. And Julie, what are you thinking? I know you're ready to jump at this one.
It just kind of dawned on me, how cool would it have been if she... I know there was the logistical issues because they didn't have the plant. But if she had undergone that process towards the beginning of the film... And then throughout the whole movie, he's coming back to her, kind of like the devil on her shoulder. And she's still not putting on the Black Panther helm or uniform. But he's still there, kind of like nagging at her. Because then I feel like it creates more inner turmoil with her.
I think something even more interesting is it's interesting that this movie wants to rely on, you have to have this special plant to get your power. Why do we have to go that route? Right? Do you see that there could have been... What if she had visions of Killmonger throughout the whole story, and maybe her bloodline inherited that power, and that's how she became the Black Panther and got it had to be like awakened inside of you. You're telling me Marvel can't do that? Like really? Like they can have aliens in the galaxies and a guy snapping his fingers and everyone disappearing, but a girl can't just get powers out of nowhere. She had to have a plant and had this ridiculous side plot to get there. And which even then, she 3D printed a plant and ate it. Okay.
Which, even unless I missed it with like Namor's people, like the original people who like became the underwater creatures, like they ingested the plant, but I don't think anyone else has to continually ingest it. I think they're just born that way. So
right.
Wouldn't it make more sense, like you said, like, you know, her original ancestors ingested the plant and then exactly what you said, it just had to be awakened within her.
I think the idea of like... I think it's almost as if sometimes in some contexts, Black Panther says you can create a hero almost like when a hero is needed, we can create one. I kind of don't like that. I like a hero being born through need and necessity. So why didn't the Black Panther just be born out of need and necessity? Like the last one passed away, another one rises to be like anybody else. Adam, I think that's a far more interesting story right there.
I mean, that's very believable. I that would make sense to me, and especially because, like, the first Black Panther, we destroy all those plants,
Yeah.
and then the next one, we're like, dang, we really need those plants.
Yeah, could have saved me 40 minutes at least.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, it's tough because it's like I don't want to be too critical on this movie, but sometimes you just have to be because it really was messy. And I think this is where Marvel's getting itself into trouble a little bit with it. It has too many things going on and it's not too sure the story it wants to tell, which, again, I know there were some issues with Latia Wright being Black Panther. I don't know. There was some political reasoning and there was some issues with her and Disney. She got injured at one point. So maybe there is something that happened there that we're unaware of that caused the story to be as choppy as it was. But the thing that bothered me the most was the very, very end of this movie. We know in the other Black Panther, he did take a love interest, King T'Challa. He did have a love interest who he was with. And she comes back in this movie and she helps out. And she was actually a fun character too. I can't remember her name. And I know that's really bad. That's going to murder me.
Lupita Nyong'o. Well, the actress is Lupita.
Lupita, yeah, and then Nakia is her name, and she was phenomenal. I actually really liked her, and I liked how that was one approach they kind of did well in this movie, right? The different forms of grieving that everyone had with this movie, like Angela Bassett had for losing her son. Like that was maybe the core focus of this movie should have been, maybe a little bit, but again, that's a whole nother discussion. But it's revealed at the end that Prince T'Challa, King T'Challa, I should say, has a Prince T'Challa. He has a son. And it seems like he's going to carry over the Black Panther mantle at some point. It's kind of heavily inferred like, oh, I'm the king. I'm going to be the next one. I'm going to be the next Black Panther. So I guess if they don't like Shuri, they got a backup plan. Did you get that feeling, Adam? Because that's kind of what it felt like.
Oh, absolutely. They set him up for however long down the line to be like, all right, let's sign him on.
And I'm not going to lie, I feel like that cuts Shuri a little dirty.
Absolutely.
I mean, it was a nice scene, and I think they did have a nice little interaction at the end. Like, a part of her brother is still alive, and it was nice. Like, they had the little flashback thing, which, brings everyone to tears. Oh, it's so sad, And it is, but you're undercutting her story a little bit there. Like, oh, yeah, the next generation's already... Oh, Shuri, don't worry about it. The next generation's ready in case you can't do it. How did you feel about that, Julie? Did you get that kind of vibe from it, or...
Yeah, and it's not if you can't handle it. It's like, he's going to come and he's going to take it eventually because he's literally named after him. And he agreed that we were going to keep him in the wings and prepare him for the time that he's ready for.
Oh, yeah. He's the next Black Panther. Don't worry about it. He's going to be doing
I'm
it.
sure he's kind of like, thank God, because I did not want this.
I know. It kind of stinks that way. And, maybe I'm overreading it. There could be that too. But that's just how I felt. I wanted this movie to be Shuri's journey, dealing with the loss of her brother, coming to terms with it, maybe finding this other race of people and seeing what their issues are and how it ties into theirs. There's so much more. This is one of the problems, again, I keep saying it, that Marvel's going to have going down the line. They're doing too much at once. Sometimes we need to just pull back a little bit and focus in on our own story. Because in some ways, that was why the last Black Panther movie was a bit stronger than this one, in my opinion. And I wasn't a huge fan of that movie either, but at least it was one central story. And it had some ties into the Marvel Universe. I guess they weren't fully engrossed yet, so that's why you didn't have as much. But I think it's stronger for that. And it made those scenes in that movie more memorable because, I'll be honest with you, there's not much I'm remembering about this movie. The action scenes were kind of unremarkable, a lot of it for me, except for the city flooding was kind of horrific. I did think that was kind of cool. Namor, again, Adam, I think he looked cool, and I know you like that, but his battle scenes, did they really stick with you that much? Like,
I only remember him hopping.
Yeah.
That's about it.
I just remember him hopping. Side note to that, at least mutants have been introduced again in officially. The word mutant was said. Oh, X-Men fans, we're getting there. We're almost there. We said the word mutant the second time now. I think Miss Marvel was the first time, and now this is the second time. So mutants are coming. It's just a matter of time. But yeah, Black Panther's adventure, that's kind of where we're at with it. So I think it's time we give you our final scores. I'm going to give Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, a 6.5 out of 10.
Wakanda Forever!
It's tough for this movie because I think they were in a tightrope. You know, they had an issue making this movie. Obviously, you know, they wanted to pay tribute to Chadwick Boseman. They wanted to continue the story of Black Panther. Ryan Coogler, I don't envy the position he was in. I think he did okay, you know, as far as paying tribute to Chadwick Boseman. This movie does phenomenal. The rest of the movie, not so much. I'm not too sure if I would ever go back and actually watch this again. You know, I think the new Black Panther, I think Shuri, I think she is a good choice, and I think she'll carry on the mantle for as long as she chooses to, or in this case, as long as Marvel chooses to have her. I think she'll do a great job, and, you know, I'll look forward to her in other adventures. But, you know, if this is what we're going to keep getting from these Marvel standalone films, I'm not sure if I'm on board, really. Adam, where do you stand with this one?
I am going to give Wakanda Forever a 6.5 out of 10 as well. You know, it didn't hit the same beats as the first movie. I wish that, because I liked the first movie a lot, and this one I feel suffered a lot from the, you know, its chaotic storyline. But there is a lot to take from this movie. I think it's definitely still at least worth a watch, at least once.
Yeah, I think you kind of have to, especially if you want
Right.
to stay in the loop with Marvel, which is part of, you know, their whole theory that they have going. You can't miss a movie, you can't miss a show, you got to stay part of it. But I think there is some stuff that warrants it. It's just there's a lot of mess to get through. So as long as
Right.
you can get through that, I think there is some enjoyability out of it. So I agree with you. Good. I'm glad to see we agree. Julie, where do you stand with this one?
I'm going to give Black Panther Wakanda Forever a 6.5 out of 10.
Go, child.
Wait, what? And leave you here?
Run!
Keeping things consistent. I think, you know, there were some positive things in the movie. I think it would have benefited greatly from some trimming here and there. I'm curious to see, you know, characters continue on after this and see if there's any lasting impact. But this was just kind of another movie. Didn't feel any.
Yeah, you know, it's tough because Marvel, they have good characters already established, so let's carry on with those characters. In this case, you know, they had to make a detour, right? We lost one of our main characters, but you already had characters in the background that were more than willing to jump up and, you know, carry the spotlight. But unfortunately, I just think they're a little in over their heads right now, Marvel. You know, they have all these future projects planned up until like 2030 or whatever it is. Sometimes, again, let's take a step back and worry about the next couple years, or next year or two, or just this movie specifically. That seems to be the problem, and hopefully, you know, Marvel can kind of get their act together with that and just streamline these movies. Because I don't know about you guys, I don't want to be in the theater for 3 hours every time I have to go see a movie. That case, I won't be going to theater, especially with that price hike. See, now we're keeping this relevant. But anyway, topical guys. Anyway, thank you guys so much for joining us for this episode of The Real Review. My name's Kevin. That guy there, he's Adam, and she's Julie. We are The Real Movie Guys. Real guys, real movies, real thoughts. We'll catch you next time.
Peace out.
If you guys
Bye.
like what you've seen here today, consider giving this video a like and leaving your thoughts in the comments below. If you want to stay up to date with everything Real Movie Guys related, make sure to hit that subscribe button and check us out on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And don't forget, all you audio listeners at home, we are available on many podcasting platforms. Just search The Real Movie Guys, you should pop right up. Thank you again all so much for joining us on this episode of The Real Review. We are The Real Movie Guys. Real guys, real movies, real thoughts. Catch you next time.